Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up is absolutely a fan-favorite Twilight Zone episode. It's got one of the most famous twists that turned into an iconic image for the original series. But putting its popularity and memorable status aside, is it one of the higher tier installments of the show? Or is this a case of style over substance? Two police troopers investigate the crash of an unidentified flying object in a snow-covered forest area. It's thought that the aircraft plummeted into a local pond, but fresh footprints lead out of the water and to a local diner. Outside the diner, a bus is parked. The travelers and their driver are currently stranded as the bridge they need to cross is not drivable. The troopers inform the patrons and the man working behind the counter of the situation, and that they believe whatever was in the UFO is in the diner at that very moment. Suspicion increases when the bus driver says he only picked up 6 passengers, but 7 claim to have been on the vehicle. When the establishment's jukebox starts spontaneously playing music and the lights begin flickering, an ominous tone fills the air. One of these people may not be human, but who? And what's their scheme? Rod Serling wrote the original draft of this script in 1958. It was called The Night of the Big Rain back then, and the big twist involved a stray dog at the diner turning out to be the Martian. That obviously changed since there is no dog in this episode. The title of the installment also changed one more time before settling on Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? Nobody Here But Us Martians was the second name for this episode. None of these are great titles in my opinion, but it's hard to imagine it being called anything other than what it's known as today. I'll say that I thought heavily of The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street upon my latest rewatch of this episode. The basic concept at its core is similar. As the stories proceed, the characters get more and more suspicious of each other, making outlandish claims of even their spouses. This is a lot more tongue-in-cheek and less serious than the important moral in Maple Street, though. However, those comparisons are easy to make. Like the previously mentioned episode, this had a pretty big cast for a Twilight Zone story. Many of the actors made multiple appearances in other episodes. William Kendis, Morgan Jones, Bill Irwin, Barney Phillips, and John Hoyt took several trips into the fifth dimension. Hoyt was last seen in The Lateness of the Hour, which was one of the videotaped installments, so seeing him in full film glory was appreciated. He gave a strong performance on several fronts. Phillips is very recognizable to Zone fans for his 4 roles, but I think his turn as Haley the bartender is what he's most famous for within the fandom. Even with all this well-known talent involved, one actor totally stole the show.
That's a good one. First he wants snowshoes, then he wants a lawyer.
Jack Elam plays this wacky old man, and I loved him. Any line he's given is a home run.
6 humans and 1 monster from outer space. You wouldn't happen to have an eye in the back of your head, would you?
You got identification, Grandpa?
Left it down in the pond in my spaceship. Take me to your leader. Take me to your leader.
Honestly, he doesn't even have to say anything with those fantastic facial expressions. Elam was blind in one eye and clearly got some use out of it for these kinds of roles over his long career. He was only 40 years old when they shot this, but because of a convincing performance, makeup job, and lightened hair, he's more than believable as this unhinged old coot. He brought energy and comedy to a story that blended tones.
She's just like a science fiction, that's what she is. A regular Ray Bradbury.
That was one of a few times author Ray Bradbury got a shout-out in a Twilight Zone episode. Serling was always a fan of his, even though they had a bit of a complicated relationship after this series started. Still, Bradbury came in to write I Sing the Body Electric in Season 3. It would be his only script produced of a handful he submitted for the show. This was the first of 5 installments directed by Montgomery Pittman. Pittman is unique for being the only director to also write a few of his episodes. This started with his next, funnily enough, called 2. We'll get to covering that one sooner than later. His directing work here is solid. I enjoyed the shots outside in the snowy forest before they head in the diner for the bulk of the story. It sets the tone nicely with a certain atmosphere. Rod literally walks out from behind a rock to deliver his opening narrator lines out there. The fake snow also stops while he's talking. It's kind of funny, but also can be taken as a bit creepy. Sort of a microcosm of this episode. I like that. After the strange occurrences continue inside the diner and paranoia sets in for quite a while, a phone call relays to the troopers that the bridge has been approved to travel on. Not being able to hold the people there any longer over the absurd-sounding notion that one of them is a monster, they let everyone on the bus, with the police leading the way over the bridge. Sometime later, Ross, the businessman, returns to the diner and informs Haley that the bus sank into the water below after the bridge collapsed. No one, including the police, survived. Ross then brings out a third arm and reveals that he is indeed a Martian, a scout sent to begin the colonization of Earth. He menacingly states his friends are on the way. However, Haley's demeanor changes. He admits that's not his real name, and Ross's Martian friends were intercepted by his people from Venus. Their own plan to colonize Earth has been long in the making.
And if you're still alive, I think you'll see how we differ.
The surprised Martian stares ahead, defeated. The Venusian, cackling like a madman, ends the episode. That double twist really elevated the story. It would have been decent enough with just the Martian reveal, but adding the Venusian turn lifted this one into a higher status. It also created an emblematic visual with the third eye reveal on Haley's head. Knowing that both Ross and Haley have ulterior motives makes for a fun rewatch too. Trying to spot Ross's little tells in what he's doing rewards the viewer on a second or third screening. The simple but effective Martian third arm works great because of precisely timed movements and prop work. It looks pretty flawless in the scene. A stagehand was placed behind John Hoyt for this shot, and while an obvious technique, it doesn't take away from its visual appeal. Haley's eye was a little more complicated. Double exposure was an idea that they attempted but weren't able to execute properly enough, apparently because you could see through the eye too much. Instead, the makeup department attached the eye to Barney Phillips' head with a wire hidden under his hair. The wire was supposed to move the eye around, but it's barely perceptible in the final product. Maybe not the best looking makeup effect this team was responsible for, but it became an image that has represented the show for decades, so I think we'll call that a win. Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up isn't one of my personal favorites, but it has to be required viewing for how well known it is. It has its flaws throughout, but a few charismatic performances and a phenomenal double twist ending make it a popular destination in the Twilight Zone.